So today we're going to talk about, how to best engage mentors. During the next 6 weeks, you're going to have a lot of mentor meetings, and it's important to know how to best engage your mentors, how to get the most value out of those meetings. But first, a few words about myself. So you know who you're talking to. So I'm Johan. I live in Munich for about, it's been 7 years almost. I'm originally French. You can probably tell that from my accent. I've also been living in the US for 7 years. My background is in software engineering. I started as a software architect in '99, and also career, and working to, in different industry, gaming, travel, and copyright. And then I co-founded a company called Sysmic back in 2007, which we actually built in San Francisco with another bunch of French co-founders. And, very, long journey. We raised 16 millions, got acquired by Hootsuite, which is a social media management suite. And yeah, so that was kind of, my entrepreneurship sort of experience, or one of them at least. Then I moved to Munich. I started to want to get into this tech scene here, and basically through a bunch of events, and ended up working as a tech evangelist, which means that I was building awareness around my company in the tech ecosystem. So I organized somewhere around 200 events in 3 years. Also organized 3 conferences around deep tech. Then I joined Techstars, which some of you might know, which is essentially like a global accelerator network. So I invested in 20 companies worldwide, and coached quite a few founders. And I'm still quite involved actually with Techstars, running 2 programs, just finished 3 of them. So I've been mentoring and coaching a lot of founders, and so I could see what are the good patterns when it comes to those mentoring sessions, and how to really get the best out of it. So that's what the talk is about today. Hey David, good to have you here. Let me start by this. Engaging mentor is really hard, right? It's not an easy thing. You might be thinking about it just as conversation, but if you really want to get the most out of it, you're gonna need to put some work into it, right? So first, let's maybe talk about why mentors do that, right? Why do mentor? They are volunteers, just like the rest of us at African Tech Vision. And they do that because, maybe, there's a mentoring because maybe they had mentors in the past, and, they see the value in having, a strong mentor. Maybe they didn't have mentors, right? Which was actually my case when I was CTO and co-founder. I didn't really have anyone to turn to and ask questions, right? And I've loved to have that. So, that's my reason to give back to founders. And, some of them just want to contribute to some things that, resonate with them. Obviously, our message of, helping you as female entrepreneurs resonate quite well because we have quite a few mentors. Mentoring is fun as well, right? It's a good way to meet new people, to get to get exposed to new ideas, to be also challenged somehow. Sometimes, people will ask you pretty tough questions, which really makes you think about things. And, last but not least, exposure to new ideas, I think is something that I personally really, really enjoy. And I'm sure like all of our mentors are in that case as well. By the way, feel free to interrupt me anytime if you have questions, right? Just don't be shy. So, you know, how to go about it? Well, you know, the first thing is really to put in the work, right? You're going to need to research those mentors that you're going to be communicating with. You have their LinkedIn profile, you know, potentially their social media, like just stalk them, right? Like Google them, get to know who they are, like what have they been doing in, you know, during their career. The more information you get, the better you can build like a good rapport and a good, you know, exchange with this mentor, and also tap into this knowledge, you know, like really trying to narrow down like what kind of questions your mentor is going to be able to be comfortable answering, like where is their strong experience in and those things. So put the work, right? Like there's no shortcut to it. Like you really need to do it, because what happens if a mentor, you know, realize that you haven't really researched them, they will be less engaged, right? And you don't want that. Mentorship is, to me, about collecting data points on your side, right? Like you're gonna talk to different mentors. At the end of the day, it is your company, right? Like nobody can tell you what you should be doing, right? Like, and we also tell mentors, like we do the same sort of thing for mentors, where we tell them like, look, like you need to guide, like you should not say like, do that or do this, right? Like it's a guiding process. It's a company, you know probably the market better than anyone else. And to some extent, you need to trust your guts, right? And what mentoring is doing is like it's adding data points to your gut feeling. Is that understandable? Any questions on that? Good. So there are different type of questions, right? There are good and bad questions. Well, not necessarily like bad, but like there are better questions than others. So, you know, depending on the question you're going to ask, that will influence the answer you're going to get. So if you approach a mentor with pretty vague question like, hey, I have no idea how I should price my product, right? Like one answer you might hear is like, I don't know either, right? Like, but most likely, you know, they will be trying to be helpful and try to give you like some sort of answer on that. But then you realize that every mentor you're talking to is giving you a different answer, which is fine. But you know, it might also mean that you have not been precise enough in your question. And you know, like a good phrasing for this sort of question would be like, in your experience, like what brought you to come up with a great pricing strategy, understanding like the process, not necessarily like, you know, the end thing. When you say like, how should I price my product? Like someone is gonna try to come up with an idea about like how you might be doing that. They might not even tap into, you know, their own experience. But when you say like, you know, how did you do it in the past? Like, how did you come up with a good pricing strategy? That's a very different type of question. And they tap into the knowledge and the experience to bring you, you know, some elements, right? And of course, then it's going to be up to you to, you know, figure out like, you know, like what you want to keep out of that, right? So vague questions lead to vague answers, right? Like you need to be quite precise. When you ask questions, the more precise you can be, the better, you know, informed the answer is going to be. And you know, the better you're going to leverage their experience as well. So instead of coming up with something like, hey, you know, again, like let's take this pricing thing, you know, how should I price my product? Say something like, I've seen that, when you were in this position at this company, or like when you were a founder before, like you had to come up with pricing strategy. Like, how did you do that, right? That's very different. So how do a mentor session goes like that? That's an important one, because mentoring sessions, like, they go pretty fast, right? Like I forgot how long it's going to be, like half an hour or something. Mohammed?
Yeah, I think it varies, depends on
Okay.
both parties.
Okay. But in any case, it's always too short, right? Like, especially when you have someone interesting in front of you, it's always going to be too short. So you need to make sure you make the most out of that time. First, you start by introducing yourself, right? Like, and that should take like 1 minute. I should have put the minutes it should take on this slide, but like, 1 minute, 2 minutes maximum. Give them some context about like what you're doing and like your overall, market. Like, some mentors might be unfamiliar with your market, right? Like, if you tell me about like, hey, like I'm building this product for, my market, like I don't really know what your market is like. I might try, and then like my natural instinct is going to be to try to map out like what I know about my market to your market, but it might not be the right way, right? Because your market might be really different. So you need to, give some context there. And then give the story, right? About like, how did you come up with this company and this product? I think a bit of storytelling is always useful, at the beginning to make things stick in people's mind. And then eventually, talk about the product. What is the product doing, right? If you have a demo, like, present the demo. And again, like, just think about just a few minutes every time. Like, all of those bullet points are like 1 to 2 minutes maximum. Present your traction, your business model, if you have one. If you don't have traction, you don't have traction. That's fine as well, right? And then, ask them about, like, ask them to give some sort of introduction as well, so you get to better know them, even though you obviously like research them, but it's always good to build this rapport. And then dive into questions, right? What we're gonna do is
Johan, can I just one comment on that last slide? Possibly a 0.0. If you have the chance, I would say do some research on the mentors before your meeting, even if it's as simple as looking up their LinkedIn. Know what kind of work they've done, know what industry they play in, know where they're
David, I already covered that.
Oh, did you? Okay, sorry.
Look at this slide. I was like my 0.0 actually.
All right, same page. I joined too late. Sorry.
Sorry, but I have a short question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was wondering, what do you think about sending a small pitch deck beforehand or sending information beforehand, or should we just start with the conversation?
So they will get your lookbook, and Mohammed, like, I speak under your control here, but normally they should get some information about you. So it's not that they're going to come up to the meeting without knowing anything about you.
Okay.
Mohammed, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Good.
Thank you.
So pitch deck and so on, like, just keep it for later, right? Like, there's no need, like, don't overwhelm them with information before you start. Like, they're gonna get the basics about like what you're doing, which will give them like, some entry point into the conversation as well. All right, so mentor mock-up sessions. What we're gonna do with you, because it is different, it is a difficult exercise to get right. So what we're gonna do is we are going to conduct some like fake mentor meetings with you, right? Like, so a bunch of us at African Tech Vision, like, we're going to do meetings and like, probably like half an hour, and give you feedback about how you engaged the mentor, like us, and like so it's important to play this game along, right? Like and sort of pretend that we are a mentor, which we pretty much all are, to be honest, at least the people you're going to talk to. And we'll give you feedback on, like what you need to improve. It might be that you forgot to introduce yourself. It might be that you spoke too much. It might be that you didn't speak enough. It might be that you didn't ask enough questions. All those things. It is difficult to keep it in balance and, to get into it. So that's why we're doing that, to make sure that you really get the best out of it. Take notes. You're going to forget, like you're going to have a lot of meetings. And if you don't take notes, like you will forget, most of it. So make sure that you have pen and paper, like avoid typing on the screen, like on the computer, it might be distracting. Pen and paper is always better, and keep track of all those mentor meetings with all your takeaways. Again, it's really about collecting those data points, right? And if you can have them in written form, like that's better to get like an objective view on, the data. Otherwise, you might get bias actually, because you might connect better with, one particular mentor. That always happens, by the way, right? Like it's just how humans are. And so you might have biases towards like what this particular mentor says, and sort of forget about like what the other said, right? So it's important to again, go back to this data point collection aspect where like you write on everything, where you can take like a more objective look on what you got out of that. So how do you use that? How to do that well? It requires practice, right? Like there's no way you're going to get it right the first time. But that's also why we're doing like mock mentor sessions with you. We're also discussing like potentially, shadowing you in some of those calls, which means that, you're going to have like someone from African Tech Vision, like just being silent in the meeting and see how it goes and give you feedback on how to better engage with mentors. Don't skip the mock mentor session, please. Like it is really, really important. Like I could not emphasize that's more. Be in the driver's seat. I've seen many founders sort of like, particularly when you have mentors who have like strong personalities, they have a tendency to want to lead the conversation. But at the end of the day, it is your company again, right? Like, so you need to drive this conversation. You need to get what you need out of those sessions. If you let them doing it, like you're gonna get something, but like not necessarily what you really wanted to get out of it. And again, being in the driver's seat means that, yeah, you might need to bring back the conversation to, where it was, like when a mentor just like go on a tangent. It might means that, you need at some point to interrupt them. If they go on and go on in sort of a monologue for 10 minutes. We're going to look out for that, obviously, and practice with you. Having a good level of energy is important, right? Like you've seen it, like you've probably been in many, Zoom calls. When you have someone on the other side who has like low energy, like it's not very engaging, right? Like you need to put extra effort into like being really high energy, like I don't know if drink a coffee or something, but something that like you need to project this energy, this willingness to learn. Don't sell. I've seen too many founders trying to like sort of almost transforming their mentor calls into like a sales pitch, right? Like that's not the goal. Like don't sell to them. Like they are here to help you figure things out. So there's no point in selling. Keep that for your customers. Keep track of time. Things go fast again. Like you spend half an hour, like, and you just like totally forgot where the time was. So always, keep the time in check to make sure that, all the questions that you need to ask, you can ask. And of course, ask questions, right? Like, it seems almost like stupid to say that, but again, if you have mentors who have like, stronger personalities, they have this tendency to lead the conversation. And then you get out of that and you're like, oh, but I actually didn't really ask my questions. And that's not really useful. I mean, you might have, gotten some other insights, but not necessarily the one you really wanted to get. Build, relationship with the mentor, like, show your vulnerable side. Being vulnerable is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of courage and strength. The more transparent and vulnerable you're going to be, like, the more you're going to get out of that, like in many cases in life, to be honest. Always be appreciative of that time. They give that time for free. And so, make sure that you thank them, at the end of the session, expressively, that, it means a lot to you that, they give that time. Let me to plug my phone before it disconnects. All right. This one is, I already talked about it, but you're going to get a lot of advice, and depending on the mentor, some will be like more pushy than others when it comes to, like, how much they think you should follow that, right? Disregard that. A good mentor doesn't tell you like what you need to do. It guides you, right? Like, and so again, consider that as a data point. If the conversation goes, like on a different topic, bring it back. I know it's easier said than done, but if you spend like 20 minutes talking about something that is not actually part of your questions, that might be a problem, because you're not going to get the most value out of that. So really try to refocus the conversation when needed. Okay. If there is anything inappropriate that is being said in your meeting, or if the mentor has an inappropriate attitude, so it's inappropriate, not appropriate. Don't report things that are appropriate. It's totally fine. But report things which are not appropriate. So report it to us, right? Like, we have a form online. I'm pretty sure Mohamed already shared that. In fact, I've seen it on the Slack. Use that if something comes up, or like, just like Slack one of us and explain, like, what the issue was. The form is anonymous, like you don't even have to disclose like who you are, but like we just want to make sure that it's a safe space for you, and that no mentors is doing something we don't want them to do. It's very rare, but it can happen, so it's just we want to be safe on this side. Something to, going back to this data collection point aspect, mentors can be wrong. And in fact, often they're wrong, right? Like, because they don't have the answers to everything, right? Like, and even if they have done something similar than you did, like, chances are that, the market was different, the context was different. So don't believe what they say as like face value, because they won't do that on purpose to mislead you, right? Like, but the fact is, you might get some advices that don't apply for you actually, which is why like trying to take like a step back and like compare like what different mentors have said on the same questions might be really important. Again, it's your company, so mentors are just here to help you make more informed decisions on what you're doing. Nothing else. And what's great about mentors relationship is it can be for life, right? Like if you nurture the relationship. I do have some some people in my network who have been mentoring for years. They've actually even become friends, right? Like, and it's gonna be this wonderful long life experience of just like helping them. Sometimes they help back, and it's really beautiful when that happens. So, but you need to put the work into it, right? Like, and really nurture the relationship. So some practical tips here. When like some of you might be like more on the introvert side. I'm an introvert, by the way. There are techniques to make people talk, right, without talking too much yourself, or without feeling like awkward about things. And one of them is just repeating the end of what they say, because if you do that, they will keep on going, actually. It's called tactical empathy. It's negotiation technique. So, if they say something like, let me try to find an example. Yeah, I would do that, that way, for example. They're like, oh, that way? And then they will go on, right? Like they won't leave it hanging like that, right? Like, so it's a good way to keep the conversation going somehow. It's good to also like, rephrase what they say to make sure that you've understood what they said. And more importantly, it really makes them feel that you're listening to them, right? It's two-way interaction. So, when you ask a question, they give you some insights. Take this insight, reformulate it in your own word, and say like, if I understand you well, you meant, doing this, that, and that way, right? Just to make sure that, the understanding is strong there. Keep 2 to 3 minutes at the end, to wrap up with your takeaways. So essentially, that's also why it's important to take notes, right? Like, because if you don't, like, it's going to be difficult. By the end of the meeting, you might already have forgotten what was said at the very beginning. So, write some bullet points there of your takeaways during the meeting, and at the end of it, like before, like the 3 minute mark, make sure to say like, okay, like, thanks a lot for your time. If, like, if I sum up things, what I've learned today, so you said this, we might do that, doing that, like, and again, in your own words. Again, don't forget to thank them for their time. And, importantly, like, really enjoy and have fun. I do think that mentoring is really fun. Being mentored or mentoring yourself, like, those two things are super fun. It's, like, on one end, you have like building a great human relationship with someone else. And on the other end, like, you get some knowledge that might be otherwise really difficult to acquire, because like, you're gonna get access to people who have a lot of experience and knowledge to share. And yeah, and it's overall quite fun to do that. I think that's pretty much it. Any questions?
Amazing. Feel free to ask your questions at this point.
David, did I forget anything?
No, I don't think I need to duplicate anything that you said. Yeah, I paid attention.
Questions. You're gonna have to ask questions. So stop now.
Yeah. Maybe I can kick off.
Yeah.
I have a question actually. What will you advise on how to handle a scenario where you have two advice that sound really great, but are completely contradictory. How to handle these data?
Yeah. I mean, that happens all the time, right? Like, it's mind-blowing. You can have like, two extremely smart people, and like they would give you like totally different advices, right? And the reason is that their experience is different. Their, knowledge of the market is different. There's a lot of different parameters there. And so the way to handle it, again, it's really through, like, first, sort of like trusting your guts, right? And then look at, the data again. You're gonna have, one way or another, like, some mentor saying something, some other saying something else. At the end of the day, like, you are the one who are gonna need to make the cut. And, I don't know if there's a process for that, to be honest, to say like, okay, like, I'm gonna go with this one because like that sounds better, or no, it's just like a data point at that point. So you might be conflicted. You might want to, like, go down maybe a bit more into like how they're thinking about it. You might want to make sure that they have all the data also themselves or like all the information they need to know to, make informed advices. But yeah, at the end of the day, you're gonna be the one who makes the cut, and there's no formula.
Thank you.
Just one thing to add.
Hello.
Yeah. Actually, I have a question. If we have a need, like a mentor need arising along the way, how do we, I mean, is it still with the same mentor that we have to ask the question, or should we ask for another mentor as well?
What do you mean by a mentor need? Like a particular...
Yeah, a particular question or need of support, like, I don't know, like, for example, the first one I asked, we were asking for were sales and marketing, and after that I need the leadership skills, for example. Should I still ask the same mentor, or, I mean, is it better to ask for another mentor to help us?
So I guess it really depends, right? Like, if we talk about, for example, like leadership, like a lot of the mentors you're going to be exposed to, like they do have like a lot of experience, so they might be able to, answer something like that. But on the other hand, if you ask marketing advice to someone who's more like technical, let's say, right? Indeed, that might not work really well. So if you end up in a situation where, like, none of your mentor can actually answer your question, just come to us and ask us if we would have someone in our network to help with that, and most likely we will have someone.
Thanks. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe to add up on this, you will be matchmaked with more than one mentor. So that increases the chances of having a variety and having mentors who can answer your question. And if there is a missing skill, you should ideally ping your ATV success lead. So that's one person in the team who pinged you this week and welcomed you to the program. That's your go-to person.
Great. Thank you.
Hey, Anne, just a question. I joined late, like David, so maybe I missed it, but do you have any advice?
I hope it's not the same question that David.
No, it's not. It's not. Do you have any advice on engaging mentors? So let's say right now, like David is my mentor and I have the first meeting with him, like when and how do I go about setting up more sessions and just scheduling some calls with them to keep this relationship going?
Okay. Well, I think you need to ask, right? Like one thing that is important, and maybe I forgot it in this. No, actually, I don't think I did, but like being appreciative is very important, right? And if you see that this mentorship, dynamic works really well for you, like just be transparent about it. Be like, wow, that was like insane, like what value you brought today. I would really, really love to continue this conversation with you. Like, is it possible to schedule another session with you? Because I've learned so much that I'd like that to continue. That makes sense?
Yes, and maybe you talked about it before, but would you recommend, I mean, the answer is yes, but what about follow-ups? How long should I wait before following up with mentors on stuff that we discussed, on maybe commitments that they made? What is your advice on that?
Yeah, send them an email afterwards, right? Like, and I didn't cover that, but it's always a good practice after a mentor session to send a quick email, sort of like recapping, the different points that were mentioned. Again, expressing gratitude and asking about the next steps, right? Like, and saying, okay, what would be, and of course, like, don't push it too hard, like, because not everyone has the same availability, right? So ask them about like how, like, with which frequency they would be comfortable to actually meet, and try to essentially remove any work from their side, right? Like make sure that you suggest sometimes to meet next and see if that works with them. Just try to remove maximum work from them and handle that yourself.
Thank you.
I have a question regarding the being in the driver's seat. It was really interesting because I think that's one of the things where I feel most, I'm lacking a skill, because I tend to let people talk and not interrupt them. And I was wondering if you have any advice on how I can, yes, with respect, somehow get them back on track, let's put it that way.
Oh, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, you're gonna have to interrupt them, right? Like, if they go on, be like, okay, I like, this is extremely, useful what you're saying, but like, do you mind if I interrupt? And like, because I have this question that is really on my mind, and we will go back to what you were saying before at some point, but I really would love to, discuss this with you because we don't have so much time to do that. So generally you play on the notion of time, right? Like saying, oh, like, since, like, we only have like 10 minutes left, like, do you mind if I interrupt and like, go to these questions that I prepared for you?
Okay.
It takes practice, Lydia,
yes.
but
well, thank you.
Sure. I don't know, David, do you have any other advice maybe on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, just an observation that I've had. I think people don't mind if you're interrupting them in a, you actually said something earlier that I think was really interesting. I would love to dig deeper on that, as opposed to just, hey, everything you're saying is, useless. I want to get this back onto my agenda.
Yeah.
But also, I think if you are a little bit timid, it's just human nature. People will want to fill the void of there just being empty conversation. So sometimes you may find they're talking because it seems like you aren't talking enough. And they just wanted to seem like, hey, we're trying to give anything we can to see what's going to spark your interest. So if you're sitting there just waiting for them to stop, they'll likely probably keep talking because they're thinking you're quiet because you don't have anything to say, or they haven't provided anything interesting enough that you would like to dive deeper into. So I'd always say be proactive. If there's an area that you want to take it into, or something of keen interest, like Johan said, it's your time. Really use that time, and they'll appreciate you sort of having an agenda and wanting to steer the conversation. But in these XYZ topics, wanting to allow them to sort of expound on their experience and give advice and feedback.
Thank you. That's
maybe one good practice maybe is, you know, like when you present yourself and like what you're doing, and then you just tell them like, look, I research your profile. I can, I came up with questions about this, that, and that I would like to cover today, right? And so, you know, when they go too long on something, you can be like, okay, you know, that is like extremely interesting, like, you know, but like maybe we can go back at it later, because like I would also, you know, love to cover like those other questions that I talked about.
A question on that, Johan. So whenever I'm speaking to people that I don't know, especially like in the mentoring kind of session, I always like to take a couple of minutes to like introduce myself personally, like to create this personal kind of touch before diving deeper into anything. Would you recommend that, or would you recommend saying like, hey, like, I don't know, like, hey, how are you? Good, cool, thank you. I research you, like, and just getting into this discussion. Is there a best approach, or?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of starting meetings with, you know, something a bit more like personal, right? Like, I mean, obviously, you know, like the first mentor session you're going to have with, you know, with a mentor, like you're gonna have to introduce yourself and, you know, like give a bit of context. But then afterward, like it's also good to, to just be human about things, right? Like, and that way you also build more empathy between your mentor and yourself, which is quite important for a great relationship.
Then would you say that the very, very, very first mentor meeting should be more about building this rapport rather than actually going deep into any topics?
Not necessarily the entire meeting, right? Like, because like just have just so many meetings, but giving context during the first meeting is important. I had that on.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I meant more in terms of expectations as a founder. Like, should I expect this very first meeting to be like crazy valuable with like lots of input and like lots of crazy things that I should implement, or should
No, because you need to get to know each other somehow, right? So so ask questions also about, you know, potentially their background and their career, and asking questions around that makes them feel valued also as well. And again, it's a great way to build this sort of empathy. Ask them, you know, like, is there anything you would love to know about me and my venture?
Thank you.
This is a question too for you, Johan, on that. I mean, I think we're used to these rapid fire 20, 30-minute sessions with Techstars stuff. In this format, would you suggest the founders, since they'll be reaching out to their mentors, and it is this sort of first getting to know you, what, like 45-minute meetings they should ask for, or an hour? Obviously, it's just a question. The mentor could come back and say they don't have that availability. But what would be your guidance for this first meeting that they're going to be contacting and requesting time for next week?
I would maybe ask, you know, with like what kind of length they would feel comfortable with. I mean, obviously, like it has to be probably like, I would say 30 minutes is like a good minimum, right? Maximum probably is going to be like an hour, because then people feel exhausted. Yeah, you can sort of like ask them transparently, right? Like, or if you have an idea about like how long you think this meeting should be, and maybe it's also going to be depending on the mentors, right? Like some of them you want to spend more time with them, and some not. That's totally human. and it's totally fine. So you might want also to sort of calibrate that like that. But, and it's not only just the time; it's also like the frequency of it, right? And with that, I would be also like transparent, like, you know, how often are you comfortable having those meetings with me? Like, you know, I love to talk like once a week if you can, but if it's also like every 2 weeks, I'm totally fine with it. It really depends on your time, and I know your time is really precious. So. Come on, founders. I'm sure you have other questions.
Yeah. I think a few of them are shy today. But tomorrow we have the mock sessions. Hopefully we can work that out and they can be ready for the mentoring sessions next week.
Sounds good.
I just had a question, I guess, to the people in this call. I saw a few people in the chat. If you, maybe this is helpful, Mohammed, if you haven't received, if you haven't confirmed any time for mock mentor meetings, maybe just to message or even just drop something in the chat here so we know to reach out to you.
Yeah. I think that's super valuable. Just like Johan said, we shouldn't miss that mock mentor session for anything. I think that's the purpose of the whole program, and we need to get ready for it.
Johan, I have a question. What is the worst mentor meeting that you've had as a mentor? Like, what are the no-goes that you would say founders now, or like, don't do it, please, it's horrible?
Yeah, I guess it's when, you know, I feel that the other party is not really listening to what I have to say, right? Like some people have a tendency to just brush out things without really asking more questions. And when founders also sometimes have a bit of an arrogant behavior, which might not be on purpose. Sometimes it's just a sign of, like, you know, deep insecurity and self-confidence. But that generally like reflect pretty bad. Or when founders just like spend all the time that they have in this mentor session just talking and not asking questions, right? Like I don't feel that, you know, they really value my time because they don't really ask questions, and I've seen that.
Sorry, I have another question. So I was wondering, I don't know if you've kind of covered that already, but does it make sense to, like, already in the beginning kind of have an agenda what I want to work with the mentor, like for the following sessions, like what is the goal, where do I want to get to, or should I just rather like let it flow? And I think
it's good to have goals, but don't get too stuck on that, right? Because sometimes you might be surprised of, like, you know, the insight you're gonna get outside of that. And by the way, like that's another point. Like, you know, don't judge a mentor on his LinkedIn or, you know, on what you can read about them, because that's very misleading sometimes. In both ways, to be honest, right? Like sometimes you're gonna be like, oh my god, like this guy is so exciting, and like, you know, I'm gonna learn so much, and it's just not a good fit somehow, like human wise, and like you might be disappointed, but it's just like part of the game. And on the other end, you know, come with a really open mind, because sometimes you feel that, oh, this mentor, like, you know, he probably has no clue about like kind of question I want to ask him. And sometimes you're really surprised about the level of insight you're gonna get from them, right? Like I've seen, you know, like some mentors just changing the course of a company because like they said something that was just like so on point but the founders started to be like, oh my God, but like, how come I've never seen that, right? Like, how come I never thought about that? That makes so much sense, right? It might be from mentors that you would never guess that could give this sort of insights. I've seen that many times, actually.
Okay, thank you.
But having a you know, sort of a plan and like an idea about like what you want to get out of this mentor relationship, and like, you know, be transparent about it. Like, I think really it's a good thing. But again, don't be too stuck to it.
Just to double down on one thing that Johan said earlier about that as well, it's good to have it documented, because you may even be in a meeting, you might not cover all of those points, but this is sort of a journey and it's a relationship that we evolve. So if you have it documented, some of those goals that you want to achieve, you keep it in mind and you can revisit it at a later point, so that it's not, you're so stuck on it in one meeting, as you said, because some things may come up. But I think that note taking and documenting, like Johan was saying earlier, is a really good exercise for you yourself to organize your thoughts, how you see the business. And then also it helps once you've done that exercise yourself, putting that pen to paper, that added, you know, energy to think it through, makes it that much easier to communicate to someone who is going from zero to something. You're so familiar with the business, it might just, you know, just be snapping and clicking. For them, it's not. So you really do have to be illustrative and sort of be able to communicate your story. And documenting that stuff just makes it easier, I've found.
Okay, good.
Maybe one more point from my end, a very practical advice. I know myself that internet quality in my home country, Morocco, varies all the time. It's very unpredictable, whether I have a good connection or not. But would, you know, I would definitely suggest that you try to be somewhere where you think chances are good for a good connection. Somewhere ideally where you can switch on your camera and talk without a lot of background noises, because you will build a stronger relationship with your mentor if you see each other. So we understand that sometimes things can go wrong, but definitely try to help with being somewhere where chances of good internet connection are high. And then in addition to that, make sure that you discuss with your mentor ahead which platform you're using, whether using Skype, Zoom, Google Hangouts, whatever it is. And you should make sure that you have tested it before, so that you know you have the right application and that there will be no technical hurdles. All of the mentors in our program are high caliber. They have busy jobs and every minute of their time is valued a lot. So make sure that you don't miss any time of the mentoring through technical problems.
Yeah, and if you do have connection issues and like somehow you lose the connection and you don't manage to reconnect on time, just send them an email, right? Like saying, hey, I'm like, super sorry, like my internet just like went down. I mean, it even happens to me, right? Like, so, or if you're late, right? Like if you're more than 1 to 2 minutes late, like, you know, just send them an email saying, hey, I'm super sorry, like I'm running a few minutes late. Please bear with me. But ideally try to not be late, because again, you know, like those are busy people. Yeah, every minute is important.
Actually, I have one more question. It's about when the different steps of the session. Wouldn't it be more convenient maybe to start by asking them a question related to their background before starting to discuss the content of the mentorship program?
Yeah, so, you know, like generally how it goes is like you will introduce yourself and at least the first meeting, right? Like introduce yourself, like what you're working on, and then, you know, ask them to introduce themselves as well.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Do you have any further questions about the process, how you will be matchmaked with your mentors, what your responsibilities are, what the African Tech Vision will be doing? This is the right point. You have a lot of team members here from our side to ask these questions.
Well, actually, how are we going to be matched with the mentors?
So in our team, we did the matchmaking. So we took the insights. Yasmin, you might remember I was with Mohammed in the call with you. So we took the notes on sort of what you are specifically looking for, reviewed your forms, and then we try to find the best fit in terms of mentors that can help you on your specific challenge, that have potentially industry background that is relevant to you. And we also look at a good mixture. We have local mentors and non-African mentors. So we wanted to make sure that everything is included, but we can't do the magic. So maybe in one of the social meetings or so, you'll get to meet someone that you think is amazing for you. You can reach out to everyone or ask your ATV team lead to connect you with a specific mentor, because that's how you learn about it. And you will receive from us an email that will include the details of the mentors that we would like to suggest for you. And then it will be your responsibility to reach out to these mentors, say hi. And they already, have information about all of the companies and start reaching, selecting the first times for having a call. And then I suggest that in the calls, you talk with them about frequency of the calls, so you get to a really good schedule and that you create a nice program. It's only 6 weeks. It's very short. They pass by so fast. So
actually that means that we're the one who, with the mentor, we're the ones who set up our meetings, right? It's not true.
Yes, exactly. It's yourself, because you know your agenda. We don't want to be in the middle. Marie was also posting about the mentor mixer event. Marie, maybe you want to say a little bit about that?
Actually, before that, just to answer, to complete Yasmina's thing. So yes, it's on you to schedule the meetings, but then please include us. So the info@africantechvision.org email, so that we have visibility. Also, maybe like some of us want to shadow the meetings where obviously be like silent and we will not be there, but we just want to make sure that everything is going well. So just doing some due diligence from our side. And regarding the mentor mixer, so we're going to be matchmaking you with, let's say like around 5 mentors, but then our mentor pool is much bigger than that. So on May 13th, we'll organize an event virtually, obviously, where mentors, staff, and you founders will be there. And this will be like just pure networking. So you can meet the entire pool, and if there is something that you click with, then you can also keep in touch from that event. So you're not limited to just the mentors that we're going to be matchmaking you next week.
I have a request. So the way our business works is that I'm on the business and design aspect. I handle the design and business aspects, and my partner handles the technical aspects. But he keeps on getting left out of these meetings, and I'd really like him to at least handle the more technical mentor sessions. So could he be included into all the meetings, please?
Yes, so when you schedule your calls, just make sure that you include any team members that you think could be relevant for these meetings.
One question, what do you advise?
Okay, thank you.
One question, what do you advise as a frequency to meet with the mentor?
Johan, David, do you have advice on the frequency of meeting the mentors?
It depends on, one and your time, and more importantly, their time, right? Like the availabilities. So I would say, generally speaking, once a week is great. Once every 2 weeks is great as well. It's heavily going to depend on like how much time they have to give you and how free you are as well.
I would also say if you meet a mentor only one time in the 6 weeks, you might lose your opportunity to build a long-lasting relationship. For someone to build a relationship with you, they need to get to know you better. So it's also your opportunity. It's an investment in the future and in that potential future relationship.
And just one thing to add on that, yeah, I think, weekly sounds, it sounds good, maybe more or less, depending on the person, how you click. But also, I wouldn't just depend on that meeting. If someone says, hey, it's really hard for me to get on the phone, but you can always send me an email, it's easier for me to respond that way. Use those communication channels. Don't just save it up for when you have them on a Zoom and are able to talk with them. If they're comfortable being in touch with some of these other platforms, when you have questions, also consider that as a means to keep the conversation with them going.
Thank you very much.
And maybe like another good practice that founders at Techstars are doing is to build a sort of I mean, they do that weekly, but you don't have to do that weekly. It can be like on a 2 weeks basis, ask them to, if they would like to receive like updates from you, right? And that's also a good way to keep this relationship going for a long time. And like those updates are basically like, how is the company doing, right? Like, what was the thing we achieved in the last 2 weeks? What were our wins? Where are we struggling? Where is it that we need help? What kind of connection potentially we would need? And include like all your mentors on those emails. Doesn't have to be even the mailing list, because like it's gonna be like just like probably like what five mentors. So like you just BCC them, and it really is a good practice to stay in their head somehow, or at least in their inbox.
Is there anyone with some questions remaining from the founders? If not, then Johan, I think you can call it a day.
All right.
Yeah, the next steps will be the mock sessions tomorrow and on Friday. We really look forward to meet you. It's really important that we get ready and set for next week.
Yeah.
All right. Enjoy.
Cool. Thank you all.
Thank you, Johan.
And talk soon. Cheers.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Everyone. Bye.
Bye.